Darius Blackwell entered the store he built from the ground up, dressed in a simple hoodie and sneakers, only to be looked down upon as though he didn't belong. The manager he trusted to uphold his vision of inclusivity humiliated him with cold arrogance, demanding he leave for loitering. But Darius stayed calm, determined to uncover the depth of the betrayal. The next morning he returned, not as a customer, but as the powerful CEO of Blackwell Lux. Clad in a sharp suit and accompanied by his assistants, he confronted the staff, exposing their elitism with a scathing revelation. Justice was not just personal, it was transformational. But before diving into the story, let me know where you're watching this from in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future stories. Darius Blackwell stood in his penthouse office, the sprawling city skyline before him a testament to the empire he had built with sheer determination. The hum of traffic below was a distant murmur, far removed from the chaos of his childhood in Harlem, a place where dreams were often stifled before they had a chance to grow. Now, he ruled over his domain, Blackwell Lux, a name synonymous with style, sophistication, and unrelenting ambition. Yet, tonight his triumph tasted bitter. A damning report had landed on his desk, a bombshell revealing a poisoned workplace culture at his flagship store. Ethan Caldwell, the man he had entrusted to lead, stood accused of fostering an environment steeped in elitism and exclusion, the very principles Darius had worked so hard to dismantle. The irony was a knife, twisting in his gut. He turned toward Lauren, his assistant, whose expression teetered between concern and reverence. "Undercover," she ventured, breaking the silence. Darius's voice was cold and resolute. "Numbers don't lie, Lauren, but they don't tell the whole truth either. I need to see it for myself." The crisp evening air stung Darius's face as he stepped into the Soho store, his hands buried in the pockets of a plain hoodie. Bright chandeliers illuminated the polished marble floors, casting a glow over rows of meticulously arranged, high-end goods. Despite the opulence, unease weighed heavily on him. He wasn't here as the multi-millionaire founder of Blackwell Lux. Tonight, he was just another man. Anonymous, unnoticed, unassuming. His first interaction was telling. A young saleswoman cast a glance in his direction, her expression tightening as though his presence disrupted the store's perfection. Her smile was brief and insincere, evaporating before she turned to whisper to a colleague. Their shared look spoke volumes: judgment, derision, dismissal. From the back of the store, Ethan Caldwell emerged, his tailored suit and air of confidence marking him as a man who considered himself invincible. His sharp gaze swept the room before landing on Darius. In that moment, a flicker of disdain crossed Ethan's face, barely perceptible, yet cutting. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his tone clipped and accompanied by a smirk devoid of warmth. Darius met his gaze evenly. "Just browsing," he said, his voice deliberately neutral. Ethan stepped closer, the sound of his polished shoes on the floor like a declaration of his authority. "Browsing?" he repeated, his voice laced with condescension. His eyes flicked to Darius's hoodie, then to his sneakers. "That's quite an expensive item you're looking at. Are you sure it's in your price range?" Darius inhaled deeply, suppressing the sharp retort on the tip of his tongue. He reminded himself of his purpose here: to observe, to verify the troubling reports. "I'm aware of the price," he replied, his tone steady. "I'll let you know if I need assistance." Ethan's smirk widened, growing nastier. "If you're not here to buy something, you're wasting my time." With that, he turned abruptly, dismissing Darius as though he were invisible. The brief but biting exchange made Darius's blood simmer. Still, he forced himself to remain composed. Wandering through the store, he observed the subtle yet pervasive chill in the staff's demeanor. No one approached to offer help. Conversations among employees fell silent as he passed, replaced by muffled whispers and averted gazes. Near a display of leather bags, Darius let his fingers graze one of the pieces, a design he had personally approved in the brand's early days. Pride in his work was now overshadowed by dismay. How had his vision for inclusivity and elegance decayed into this? His reflection was shattered by Ethan's voice, loud and deliberately theatrical. "Sir," Ethan said, drawing the attention of nearby customers, "if you're done loitering, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This isn't a museum." The space fell silent. Judgmental stares from other shoppers bore into Darius's back. He turned slowly to face Ethan, his jaw tightening. "I wasn't aware browsing was against store policy," he said, his tone calm yet edged with quiet defiance. "It's not," Ethan replied, a mocking lilt in his voice, "but we have a certain standard here." The implication hit like a slap. For a fleeting moment, Darius considered revealing his identity, exposing himself as the store's owner and dismantling Ethan's arrogance in front of everyone. But that wasn't why he was here. He needed to see the full extent of the rot before deciding how to purge it. "Understood," Darius said at last, his voice measured. He turned and walked toward the exit, his steps deliberate, his thoughts razor-sharp. Outside, the crisp night air enveloped him, clearing his head and solidifying his resolve. Ethan Caldwell had revealed his true nature, and Darius now had all the confirmation he needed. As he disappeared into the anonymity of the city, one thought echoed in his mind. Change was coming, and it would be anything but subtle. The morning sunlight poured through the store's glass facade as Darius Blackwell stepped inside. His presence commanded attention even before he spoke a word. Gone were the hoodie and sneakers of the previous night. Today he was every inch the CEO of Blackwell Luxe. His tailored suit exuded power, his polished shoes clicked with purpose, and his face held a calm, impenetrable expression that masked the fire smoldering within. Behind him, two assistants flanked his sides, their poised demeanor underscoring his authority. The reaction was immediate and palpable. Staff who had ignored him the night before scrambled to their positions, pasting on professional smiles. A murmur of confusion rippled through the room, whispers darting from one employee to another. "That's him. That's Blackwell." Displays were hastily straightened, racks adjusted, and an uneasy energy settled over the store. Ethan Caldwell emerged from the back, his confident swagger from the previous night replaced by a nervous edge. His face flushed as he approached, his smile tight and forced. "Mr. Blackwell," Ethan exclaimed, his voice betraying his unease. He extended a hand, which Darius pointedly ignored, leaving Ethan's gesture hanging awkwardly. "Welcome to the Soho store. We're honored to have you here today." Darius's dark eyes locked onto Ethan, cold and unyielding. "Honored now, are we?" he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Interesting. I came in yesterday and the welcome was, different." The words landed like a thunderclap. Staff froze, their carefully crafted professionalism crumbling under the weight of the revelation. Ethan's smile wavered, replaced by a flicker of panic he couldn't entirely hide. I didn't realize it was you, sir," Ethan stammered, his voice faltering. I can explain." "You shouldn't need to know someone's title to treat them with respect," Darius interrupted, his tone quiet but laced with fury. He stepped closer, his imposing figure towering over Ethan, who visibly struggled to maintain composure. "This store is supposed to represent my vision, a place where anyone, no matter who they are, feels valued and welcomed. Instead, I walk in and experience the exact opposite. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, his words failing him. "Sir, there must have been some misunderstanding. We strive to uphold the highest standards." "Do you?" Darius interjected, his voice rising for the first time. Controlled anger radiated from him, silencing the room. Customers and employees alike stopped what they were doing, their attention drawn to the scene. "Because yesterday you dismissed me as though I didn't belong. Not because you were overwhelmed or busy, but because of what I was wearing and how I looked." Ethan's complexion turned ashen. "Mr. Blackwell, I assure you." "Enough!" Darius's voice boomed, cutting through the store like a whip. His assistants exchanged glances, but remained silent, knowing better than to intervene. Darius gestured toward the gathered employees. "Listen carefully. This company does not operate like this. Blackwell Lux was built on principles of inclusion, respect, and excellence. If you can't embody those values, you don't belong here." His words hung heavy in the air, the weight of his authority bearing down on everyone present. Ethan's earlier bravado had evaporated entirely, leaving him searching for an escape. He opened his mouth to protest, but Darius raised a hand to silence him. "You've had every opportunity to lead by example, Ethan. Instead, you've fostered an environment of judgment and elitism. That ends today." Turning to one of his assistants, Darius issued his command. "I want the employee performance reports for this store. Conduct a full audit of complaints and incidents from the past year. Effective immediately, Ethan Caldwell is suspended, pending investigation." Ethan's jaw dropped. Shock and disbelief etched into every line of his face. "Suspended?" he echoed, his voice cracking. "Mr. Blackwell, please." "You're fortunate it's not worse," Darius said, his tone icy. "Take responsibility for your actions, or this will be the last time you set foot in one of my stores." Ethan seemed to consider arguing further, but thought better of it. He nodded stiffly, his gaze dropping to the floor. Darius turned back to the room, his voice carrying a finality that brooked no argument. "I'm not looking for apologies. I'm looking for change. Every one of you has a choice. Either uphold the standards this company was built on, or find the door. There is no middle ground." With that, Darius strode toward the exit, the staff parting before him like the Red Sea. His assistants followed, their expressions set in grim determination. The heavy doors swung shut behind him, leaving the store in stunned silence. Outside, the cold morning air hit Darius's face, but it did little to cool the fire raging inside him. His phone buzzed with incoming messages, undoubtedly fallout from the scene he had just caused, but he ignored them. Standing for a moment, he watched the bustling street, his mind already racing ahead. This wasn't just about Ethan or the Soho store. It was about the core principles that defined Blackwell Lux and ensuring they were never compromised again. As Darius walked away, his jaw set and his resolve unshaken, one thing was clear. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning, and nothing would stand in his way. The staff of the Soho store stood frozen, their eyes darting between Darius Blackwell and Ethan Caldwell. The tension in the air was suffocating, thick with anticipation. Customers lingered nearby, pretending to browse, but unable to look away from the unfolding drama. Darius stood tall, his commanding presence exuding authority. The silence around him absolute as he stepped forward and spoke, his voice steady and sharp. "Gather around," Darius ordered. There was no hesitation. The staff obeyed, forming an uneasy circle around him and Ethan, whose pale face and trembling hands betrayed his mounting desperation. Darius, as a piercing gaze swept across the group before landing on Ethan. "Yesterday, I walked into this store, a store I built, and was treated like I didn't belong. Not because of my behavior, not because of what I said, but because of how I looked. And you, Ethan, the manager of this flagship location, led the charge in making me feel unwelcome. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Darius raised a hand, silencing him. "Don't interrupt me. I'm not finished." The room was silent, the tension so palpable it seemed to vibrate. Darius continued, his voice rising, each word cutting through the room like a blade. Blackwell Lux was founded on the principle that luxury should be inclusive, that anyone, regardless of where they come from, what they wear, or the color of their skin, should feel valued in my stores. Yet here we are, with you standing as the face of everything we are not. Ethan's breathing grew shallow as he tried to maintain his composure. "Mr. Blackwell," he began, his voice shaking. I understand now. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Darius interrupted, his tone like steel. "Mistakes happen once. What I saw yesterday wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern, and not just with me. I've read the reports, listened to the complaints. This isn't one bad day, Ethan. This is who you are." Ethan's shoulders sagged, his gaze dropping to the floor. Around them, staff exchanged nervous glances, some nodding subtly in agreement. "But I'm not here to fire you," Darius continued, sending a ripple of surprise through the group. Ethan's head snapped up, his expression a mix of confusion and relief. "You're not?" he asked hesitantly. "No," Darius said, his tone unyielding. "Not today. Firing you would be too easy. You'd leave, find another job, and likely repeat the same behavior. That's not accountability. That's avoidance. Instead, you're going to learn what it means to uphold the values of this company." Relief faded from Ethan's face, replaced with dread as Darius's words sank in. "Starting now," Darius declared, his voice firm, "you will personally greet every customer who walks through these doors. You will welcome them with respect, no matter how they look, what they wear, or what you think they can afford. You will make them feel like the most important person in this store." The staff watched in stunned silence as Darius's words hung in the air, unrelenting. "And you will do this," Darius added, stepping closer to Ethan, his voice dropping but losing none of its intensity, "until I decide you've learned. Fail even once, and not only will you be out of this company, you'll be out of this industry. Believe me, I have the influence to make that happen." Ethan's face turned ashen. He nodded quickly, stammering, I understand. I'll do better, I swear." Darius's eyes narrowed. "Don't swear to me, Ethan. Prove it, not just to me, but to your team and every customer who walks through those doors. Prove you can be better." Turning to the rest of the staff, Darius softened his tone slightly, though it retained the weight of his authority. "This isn't just about Ethan. This is about all of us. You're all part of this brand, part of what makes Blackwell Lux what it is. If you see something that doesn't align with our values, speak up. If you don't, you're complicit." The staff nodded, their expressions a mix of guilt and determination. Darius paused, letting his words settle before straightening. "I built this company to be better than the world we live in, to be a place where everyone, no matter who they are, feels like they belong. If we can't live up to that, we don't deserve to exist." Turning back to Ethan, Darius delivered his final directive. "The next customer who walks in, that's your first chance to prove yourself. Don't waste it." Ethan nodded frantically, his hands trembling as he muttered, "Yes, Mr. Blackwell, I won't let you down." Darius held his gaze for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned and strode toward the exit, his assistants following silently behind him. The store remained hushed as the doors swung shut, leaving Ethan and the staff to absorb what had just happened. Outside, Darius inhaled deeply, the crisp air steadying him. He had made his point, but he knew this was just the beginning. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but it would happen. He would make sure of it. As he walked away, a small smile tugged at his lips. Justice didn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it meant transformation. And Ethan Caldwell was about to learn that lesson the hard way, starting now. Ethan stood by the entrance of the Soho store, the weight of Darius Blackwell's words pressing heavily on his shoulders. Each time the door opened, he braced himself, meeting the eyes of every customer with a carefully measured smile. It was a humbling posture for someone who had once built his confidence on snap judgments and preconceptions. Now, humility guided his every move. The transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it easy. On his first day under Darius's mandate, Ethan found himself slipping into old habits, a glance too judgmental, a tone too dismissive. Each mistake brought the echo of Darius's voice back to him. Fail even once and you're done. Slowly but steadily, respect shifted from being an act to becoming a genuine practice. Customers began to notice. A middle-aged woman in a simple cardigan, browsing handbags, seemed startled when Ethan approached her with genuine interest. "Let me know if you'd like to see this one up close," he offered, his tone sincere. Her surprised smile lingered, and when she left with her purchase, Ethan felt a flicker of accomplishment. Small victories began to build his confidence. Meanwhile, Darius remained anything but idle. The fallout from his confrontation with Ethan sparked a larger conversation within Blackwell Lux. Emails flooded his inbox, some supportive, others defensive, but all demanding attention. Refusing to delegate the issue, Darius called an emergency meeting with his executive team. "This isn't just about one store," Darius declared, his voice commanding the room. "The Soho incident is a symptom of a deeper problem. If we're going to call ourselves a luxury brand, we need to redefine what luxury means. It's not exclusivity, it's inclusivity, and that starts now." Rebecca, the regional manager, nodded in agreement. "Your point came through loud and clear, Darius. The staff won't forget this." "Good," Darius replied, his expression firm. "But this isn't a one-time fix. We're overhauling the culture, starting today." He announced the launch of a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program. It wasn't a token initiative to pacify critics, but a full-scale effort to rebuild the company's ethos. The program included mandatory training for all employees, revised hiring practices, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Darius personally attended the first training session, held at the corporate headquarters. Employees from various departments filled the room, their expressions ranging from skeptical to eager. As the facilitator discussed unconscious bias and empathy in customer interactions, Darius observed the room with quiet intensity. At the end of the session, the facilitator invited him to speak. Rising from his seat, Darius's presence immediately commanded attention. "This isn't just a box to check on a corporate to-do list," he began, his voice steady and clear. "This is about who we are, not just as a company, but as people. If we can't recognize the humanity in everyone who enters our stores, we don't deserve to call ourselves a luxury brand." His words rippled through the room, sparking murmurs of reflection. Darius could see the impact beginning to take root. The walls of indifference were starting to crack. Back at the Soho store, Ethan's progress continued. He greeted every customer with respect, whether they wore designer suits or tattered sneakers. Inspired by Ethan's efforts and Darius's leadership, the staff followed suit. The store's atmosphere shifted, becoming warmer, more inviting. Customers lingered longer, staff interactions felt genuine, and sales began to climb. One afternoon, Darius visited the store unannounced. This time, he didn't come undercover. As he entered, Ethan approached him with a handshake, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect. "Mr. Blackwell," Ethan greeted, his voice steady despite a hint of nervousness. "Welcome back. I hope the store meets your standards today." Darius studied him for a moment before nodding. "You've come a long way, Ethan, but this is just the beginning. Keep it up." Relief spread across Ethan's face. "I will, sir. Thank you for giving me the chance to improve." Later, Darius met Rebecca in a quiet corner of the store. She leaned back in her chair, her expression lighter than it had been in weeks. "It's working, Darius," she said with a smile. "The team feels it. The customers feel it." Darius nodded thoughtfully. "That's good to hear. But this isn't just about fixing one store. This is about ensuring that no matter where a customer walks into a Blackwell Luxe store, Soho, Paris, Tokyo, they experience the same respect, the same warmth." Rebecca tilted her head. "Do you think Ethan will make it?" Darius glanced toward Ethan, who was helping a customer pick out shoes. "I think they will," he said after a pause. "But only if he remembers why he's still here." Rebecca smiled. "You really believe in second chances, don't you?" Darius stood, adjusting his suit. "Only when they're earned." As he exited the store, the sun dipped low over the city, casting long shadows across the streets. The journey wasn't over. Not for Ethan, not for the company, and certainly not for Darius. But for the first time in a long while, Darius felt hope. The culture of respect he had envisioned was no longer just an ideal. It was becoming reality, one action and one decision at a time. And he would ensure it stayed that way, no exceptions. Weeks later, Darius walked into the Soho store again, this time alone, his quiet confidence evident. The change in atmosphere was palpable. The cold indifference he had felt on his previous visit was replaced with warmth and energy. Customers browsed with ease, exchanging smiles with the staff, who moved purposefully and with pride. A sales associate greeted him near the entrance, her smile genuine and welcoming. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you find anything?" "Just browsing, thank you," Darius replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. Moments later, Ethan appeared, his entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the arrogance and dismissiveness that had marked their first encounter. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, his voice steady but humble. "Welcome back. It's good to see you." Darius gave him a small nod, his gaze sweeping the store. The displays were immaculate, the atmosphere inviting, and the staff attentive without being intrusive. "Good to see things running smoothly," he said, his approval evident. As he turned to leave, Darius felt a deep sense of pride. The fight for equality and respect was far from over. But this moment, this transformation, was a step in the right direction. Progress, he thought, wasn't about grand gestures, but about meaningful, lasting change. And progress, he knew, was worth everything, no exceptions. Darius Blackwell's story is not just about building a luxury brand, but also a testament to the power of vision and determination. He not only transformed his company, but also inspired an entire industry to embrace fairness and respect. A long journey still lies ahead, but for Darius, every step forward is a reaffirmation. There is no room for compromise.